The nebula expanse stretched out like a dark ocean beyond the borders of charted space. To the casual observer, it was nothing more than a void, a place where stars blinked in and out like dying embers. But to the seasoned warlords who had clawed their way to power, the nebula was something far more valuable. A hidden kingdom filled with resources that could fuel their ambitions for years. It was treacherous territory haunted by radiation storms, bizarre gravitational fields, and rumors of ancient relics. Yet these dangers only attracted the most ruthless and determined factions in the galaxy. Admiral Lyra Rask sat on the bridge of the Zenith Coalition's flagship, the Resolute, her sharp gaze fixed on the swirling patterns of the expanse before her. She was a woman of impeccable discipline, every decision sharpened by years of tactical victories. She saw the nebula as an opportunity, a way to secure the Coalition's dominance over rival factions and establish order where chaos had always reigned. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in silent harmony, well aware of her expectations. Admiral, her first officer, spoke up, nodding to a holographic display that flashed with new intel. The Scouts report increased marauder activity in Sector 7. Captain Drax Cade seems to be gathering ships near the nebula's edge. Rask's eyes narrowed. Captain Drax Cade was a name she knew well. The infamous leader of the Gridon Marauders, Cade was known for his brutal efficiency and unyielding approach to piracy. He had forged a formidable reputation across the galaxy, raiding trade routes and leaving destruction in his wake. Rask considered Cade's presence here an irritation. He was unpredictable and violent, with no loyalty beyond his own ambitions. "Send a message to the scout ships," Rask ordered calmly. "Tell them to keep their distance and observe. I don't want him knowing we're here, yet." As her orders went out, Rask turned her attention to the tactical displays, watching as the sectors of the nebula lit up with various reports of activity. The Marauders were not the only ones moving into the region. She had also received scattered reports of the Legion of Rain making quiet but steady progress into the nebula's outer rim. The Legion, a disciplined and mysterious faction, held to a strict code of honor rooted in ancient traditions. While they weren't as technologically advanced as the Coalition, they made up for it with relentless discipline and a belief in their divine right to the stars. Rask couldn't suppress a small smile. The Legion's presence was unexpected, but perhaps it could work to her advantage. With the Marauders and Legion both distracted by their own objectives, the Coalition might slip into the nebula's core undetected. But the nebula was no ordinary prize. It was rumored to contain rare elements that could power entire fleets, strange alien artifacts with unknown capabilities, and an energy-rich planet at its center. For years, these were only whispers, too dangerous to investigate. But now, with technology pushing boundaries and stakes higher than ever, no one could afford to ignore it. The Resolute glided forward, its dark hull absorbing the nebula's dim light. Rask could almost feel the weight of the expanse settling over her as her ship crossed into its territory. This was a game of strategy and survival, and she intended to emerge the victor. "Begin scans for habitable planets," she commanded, her voice steady. "We're going to take this step by step, and if anyone tries to interfere, we'll remind them that the Coalition doesn't back down." Her gaze remained locked on the swirling darkness ahead, the thrill of conquest sparking in her veins. The vast nebula stretched around them, a maze of dense clouds and fragmented asteroid fields that pulsed with faint, eerie light. Admiral Lyra Rask's orders had been clear: observe and remain hidden. Coalition scouts slipped through the expanse's depths like shadows, monitoring the increasing activity of rival factions. Meanwhile, Rask studied her tactical displays aboard the Resolute, watching the movements of her enemies as if they were pieces on a game board. But one piece in particular caught her attention: the Gridon Marauders, under the command of Captain Drax Cade. His forces were less disciplined, but their unpredictability and sheer numbers made them a significant threat. Recently, several of the Marauder scouts had moved further into the nebula than ever before, as if they were probing coalition defenses. Rask suspected that Cade's interest in the Expanse was more than mere curiosity. She turned to her first officer, Commander Vale. "Any word from our informant among the Marauders?" Vale shook his head. The last report from the spy indicated they were gathering near the main trade lanes, possibly gearing up for a large-scale raid. But since then, silence. Rask frowned. Silence in Cade's ranks usually meant one of two things. Either he was planning something big, or he'd sniffed out the traitor. In either case, the lack of information was troubling. Without warning, the Resolute's comms panel lit up with a series of encrypted signals. "Incoming distress beacon, Admiral," Vale said, adjusting the frequency. "It's Legion of Rain, coordinates traced to the outer regions of Sector 7. The Legion of Rain was not known for distress signals. Rask felt a prickling suspicion, but the potential for valuable information was too great to ignore. She ordered a scout ship to investigate, commanding them to keep all systems in stealth mode and report back any findings. Minutes ticked by as the Resolute drifted in silent anticipation, the tension mounting. When the scout ship finally reported back, Vale relayed the message. "It's confirmed, Admiral. They found a Legion vessel, but it was destroyed. No life signs aboard, and it seems the damage was internal, a detonation, maybe an act of sabotage." Rask's eyes narrowed. And the source of the distress signal? It was a timed beacon, probably set up to trigger once the ship was disabled. "There's something else, though. The ship's logs were wiped clean, but our crew managed to extract fragments of coordinates pointing deeper into the nebula. This data was heavily encrypted, possibly intentional. Rask knew this was no accident. If someone wanted those coordinates hidden, it could only mean one thing: they led to something worth hiding. As her mind raced through the possibilities, she couldn't ignore the other faction's potential reactions. If Cade discovered the coordinates, he would undoubtedly pursue them. The Legion of Rain, with their rigid honor code, might treat this as an insult, an act of war if they suspected interference. And if any of them learned that the Coalition had the coordinates first, Rask knew they would strike without hesitation. "Decrypt the coordinates and set a course," she ordered firmly. "We'll move quietly. I want no trace of our path. If anyone's following, they'll need to rely on guesswork." As her crew scrambled to obey, Rask considered the situation carefully. This Nebula expedition was escalating faster than expected, with potential alliances and enmities forming beneath the surface. She had to stay ahead of her enemies at every turn. But even as she calculated her next moves, a message flashed on her private console, a communique from an unknown source, embedded with Coalition encryption protocols. It read only one line: "Beware of betrayal from within." Rask felt her heart skip. Someone knew of their plans, maybe even of the coordinates. There was a traitor in her midst, someone feeding her enemies vital information. Yet, with a hidden world waiting to be discovered, Rask's ambitions refused to be tempered. She would press forward, even with danger lurking in every corner of the Expanse. The Nebula offered an ultimate prize, and she was not one to back down from either the promise or the peril of conquest. The ghost planet loomed before them, its surface a pale, shifting landscape lit by faint green and purple hues cast by the surrounding nebula. As the Resolute descended, Admiral Lara Rask kept her gaze fixed on the planet below. From orbit, it looked almost serene, a world untouched and waiting to be claimed. But the closer they came, the more they saw signs that this world was anything but welcoming. Strange, shimmering energy fields pulsed in the atmosphere, and the scans detected unfamiliar magnetic disturbances. Rask had secured the coordinates, but she wasn't alone. Both the Gridon Marauders and the Legion of Rain had arrived, setting up fortified encampments in distant sectors. It was only a matter of time before open conflict erupted. Each faction claimed a part of the landscape and established heavily guarded perimeters, aware that one wrong move could tip the scales into an all-out war. As the Resolute touched down on a barren plateau, Rask issued orders to establish an immediate base camp. Her ground teams deployed with practiced efficiency, securing the area and setting up defensive structures. The ghost planet's surface was like a strange alien desert. The air crackled with faint static, and bioluminescent flora scattered in small patches, glowing in hues that pulsed in time with some unidentifiable rhythm. Occasional tremors rippled beneath their feet, hinting at the unstable nature of the planet's core. The strange life forms here seemed drawn to technology, as if responding to the energy signals from their equipment. One of her science officers, Dr. Sena Kovar, reported that the native flora had a unique bioelectric charge, which reacted to their instruments. Rask ordered her teams to take samples but remain on high alert. This planet held secrets, and Rask intended to uncover every one of them. Meanwhile, across the rugged landscape, Captain Drax Cade was conducting his own reconnaissance. He had set up his marauder camp on the edge of a jagged canyon, a natural fortress surrounded by cliffs and mineral deposits that shielded his forces from long-range scans. His men were rough and restless, eager for a fight, yet Cade held them back. He knew that patience was crucial here. A reckless move could cost him everything. Cade had his scouts deployed in stealth, monitoring both the Coalition's and Legion's movements. He wasn't about to let Rask or the Legion claim any advantage. His objective was simple: gain control of whatever resources lay hidden on this planet, then use it to crush his enemies once and for all. In another sector, the Legion of Rain moved with a different purpose. Their commander, High Priestess Selene Rain, saw this journey as a fulfillment of prophecy. The Legion's encampment was disciplined and orderly, marked by banners of black and crimson, and guarded by warriors in polished ceremonial armor. The planet's erratic energy pulses only reinforced their belief that it was a place of destiny. To them, the ghost planet was sacred, a divine testing ground. They sent out emissaries to commune with the strange flora, taking every sight and sound as a spiritual sign. On the second day of their stay, Rask's reconnaissance team made a startling discovery: a deep cavern filled with intricate glyphs and what looked like an alien technology core embedded in the rocks. The air within the cavern was thick with a faint, pulsing hum, and the walls were lined with symbols that no one recognized. Rask's pulse quickened as she studied the glyphs. This was no ordinary planet. It was a relic of an ancient civilization. She realized that whoever controlled this technology would gain an advantage beyond anything the factions could imagine. But she wasn't the only one who sensed the cavern's significance. The Marauders had detected the team's energy signatures, and Cade dispatched a squad of his most loyal fighters to investigate. As Rask prepared to secure the site, her comms officer reported a surge of movement from both the Marauders and the Legion. The race to control the alien relic had begun, and none of them were willing to retreat. The Nebula erupted into chaos as a massive solar storm surged across its sectors, throwing every faction's carefully laid plans into disarray. The storm arrived without warning, its electromagnetic pulses scrambling sensors and shields, turning high-tech equipment into little more than dead weight. As ships scrambled to find safety, a cold realization dawned on all three leaders: none of them could leave the ghost planet until the storm passed. For Admiral Lyra Rask, the solar storm presented both a crisis and an opportunity. Trapped in her makeshift encampment, she knew that attempting to survive alone against two powerful enemies on this treacherous planet was a death sentence. Reluctantly, she sent out an encrypted transmission proposing a temporary truce with Captain Drax Cade and High Priestess Selene Rain. Each faction would send a team to the relic's core together, combining their knowledge to unlock its power, or, at the very least, prevent its destruction from consuming them all. Captain Cade, though reluctant to trust anyone, recognized the necessity. His own marauders were already buckling under the strain of the storm, their equipment sparking and glitching under the relentless electromagnetic onslaught. He agreed to the alliance with a fierce warning he would kill anyone who turned on him. Meanwhile, the Legion of Rain saw the alliance as a sign of divine favor. High Priestess Selene believed the storm was a test, and cooperating with outsiders was a trial of their faith and strength. Her soldiers, though uneasy, followed her orders with unwavering loyalty. The three teams gathered at the mouth of the cavern where the relic was housed, each faction eyeing the others with suspicion. Coalition soldiers, marauders, and Legion warriors moved together, their faces hardened and wary. As they descended into the cavern's depths, the air grew thick and cold, charged with an energy that made their skin prickle. Strange symbols glowed along the walls, casting an eerie, pulsing light that seemed to shift with their movements. In the cavern's heart, they reached the control chamber, a vast circular room with an alien console in the center, brimming with unfamiliar interfaces. The relic hummed with life, an almost sentient presence lurking within it. Rask approached the console cautiously, her team feeding data back to the Resolute as they attempted to make sense of the ancient technology. She translated fragments of the glyphs, piecing together their meaning. The relic had the power to manipulate energy fields, perhaps even generate wormholes. But there was a catch. The relic needed a vast, continuous source of energy, and it seemed to be drawing power from the life force of anything nearby. Before she could warn the others, Captain Cade stepped forward, placing his hand on one of the console's levers. "Whatever this thing can do, it's going to be under my command," he snarled, his eyes glinting with the thrill of power. He gripped the lever, ignoring Rask's warning shout, and activated the relic's core. Instantly, a surge of energy blasted outward, knocking everyone to the ground. The relic's hum grew into a deep, resonant pulse, filling the chamber with a relentless force. Lights on every faction's equipment flickered as the relic absorbed their power, stripping their technology down to its raw energy. Within moments, weapons, comms, and protective gear were rendered useless. Panic set in as soldiers frantically checked their systems, only to find every device drained and lifeless. High Priestess Selene cried out, interpreting the situation as a divine reckoning. Her warriors fell to their knees, chanting prayers in an attempt to appease what they now believed was a sentient relic. Rask, recovering her composure, forced herself to think clearly. If they were to survive, they would need to work together in a way no one had anticipated. She locked eyes with Cade, who, despite his reckless act, seemed just as unnerved by the relic's uncontrollable power. "We're going to have to shut it down," Rask said firmly, looking at both Cade and Selene. "This relic is more than we can handle alone. If we don't work as one, none of us are leaving this planet alive." In that moment, every rival realized that survival depended on a fragile, deadly alliance, and that if they were to have any chance of escaping, they would need to set aside their enmities and trust one another, if only until the relic's threat was contained. A tense silence settled over the chamber as Admiral Rask, Captain Cade, and High Priestess Selene weighed the gravity of their predicament. The relic, now fully active, pulsated with a dark energy that seemed to feed off the cavern itself. Strange lights danced across its alien surfaces, casting shadows that stretched and twisted like living things. Even the ground beneath their feet seemed to vibrate, as though the relic had awoken something ancient and powerful beneath the planet's surface. The relic's console displayed a series of shifting symbols that none of them recognized, yet a sense of urgency emanated from the machine, compelling them to act. Rask, flanked by two coalition engineers, approached the console cautiously. Her engineers worked furiously to decipher the symbols, but the alien language defied conventional logic, shifting and reforming as though the relic were reacting to their thoughts. "Whatever this thing is," Rask murmured to her engineers, "It isn't just a machine. It's adapting to us, responding to our presence." Captain Cade, his hand still resting near the lever he'd foolishly pulled, looked over with a mixture of excitement and frustration. "If it's adapting, then let's find a way to make it work for us. We didn't come all this way to turn back now." Rask shot him a steely glance. "Do you realize what you've done, Cade? You activated something we don't understand, and now every piece of tech we brought has been drained. We're vulnerable." Cade shrugged, but even he couldn't hide the hint of fear behind his bravado. High Priestess Selene, meanwhile, was deep in ritualistic prayer, murmuring words in the ancient language of her people. She believed the relic was an artifact from her order's ancient prophecies, a tool that would judge them all. Her followers watched her with reverence, but Rask saw something else, a calculated attempt to maintain control in a situation spiraling beyond reason. As the relic pulsed, Selene approached the console, her voice calm but resolute. "This is a test of faith. If we are to unlock the relic's secrets, we must do so with humility. To act without respect is to invite destruction." Rask knew Selene's perspective would only slow them down, but something about the relic's energy made her pause. The relic's hum grew louder, its lights shifting into a new pattern. One of Rask's engineers gasped, pointing to a line of symbols that repeated over and over. "It's a sequence. A code of some kind," he said, voice tight with excitement. "If we can match it, maybe we can stabilize its energy output." The relic, sensing their efforts, began emitting a low-frequency sound that reverberated through the chamber. Rask's team worked feverishly, trying to align the symbols on the console with the glowing pattern on the relic. But as soon as they completed the sequence, the cavern trembled and the lights on the relic's surface began to swirl, shifting faster and faster. Without warning, a projection burst forth from the relic, a vast holographic map of the galaxy with specific regions highlighted in crimson. It showed wormhole pathways, ancient routes connecting star systems that hadn't been explored in centuries. The projection hovered in the air, illuminating every corner of the cavern with an eerie red glow. Selene stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe. "This is no ordinary map. These paths, they're ley lines, veins of energy that run through the galaxy. They connect worlds beyond our imagination." Cade grinned, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Imagine the advantage we'd have if we could harness this map. Instant access to the richest sectors of the galaxy, resources we haven't even dreamed of." But Rask's mind was on something else. The relic was more than a map. It was a beacon calling out across space. They weren't alone. Something was listening. As if responding to her thoughts, the relic emitted a final pulse, sending a wave of energy through the cavern that knocked everyone to the ground. A deep rumble echoed from below, as though a slumbering giant had stirred. Rask struggled to her feet, her heart pounding as she looked at her companions. "We need to shut this down. Now, whatever's out there, we just sent a signal right to it. And if it's coming, it won't be friendly." Cade glared at her, unwilling to abandon the relic's potential, but even he knew the danger was real. Selene's expression shifted from awe to grim determination, her faith now tempered by the terrifying knowledge of what they had awakened. The relic's energy continued to build, each pulse stronger than the last. Time was running out, and every faction leader understood one thing: if they didn't work together to stop the relic, they'd be facing a threat beyond anything they'd encountered before. And somewhere in the distant reaches of space, something powerful had already begun its approach. The cavern shook violently as the relic's energy surged, each pulse echoing ominously throughout the space. Rask steadied herself against the console, her heart racing. The map of the galaxy still flickered in the air, but now it pulsed with an ominous urgency, signaling a countdown that could lead to their doom. "Focus!" Rask shouted, snapping her gaze between Cade and Selene. "We need to shut it down before whatever is out there arrives." Cade, his face hard with determination, stepped closer to the console. I won't let you destroy our only chance for power and control. We can harness this. We can turn it to our advantage. Power at the cost of our lives is not power at all. Rask countered sharply. If you can't see that we're all in danger, then you're blinded by ambition. Celine, sensing the tension between the two, stepped in. Enough! This is not the time for division. We stand at a crossroads, and we must decide, do we fight each other, or do we unite against the real threat that approaches? The ground quaked beneath them, and for a moment, the room fell silent, as if the very relic was listening. The flickering light intensified, the air crackling with energy. Rask felt a chill run down her spine. It was time to put aside their grudges. Fine, Cade relented, though his voice was laced with reluctance. What do you propose? Celine, you're the closest to understanding the relic's ancient technology, Rask said, her mind racing to find a solution. You should lead the attempt to disable it. Cade, your forces can provide security. I'll coordinate with my engineers to find a way to safely shut it down. We need to work as one. Celine nodded, her expression serious. Then let us unite our knowledge. The relic seems to respond to our collective intentions. If we all focus on stabilizing its energy output, perhaps we can quell its awakening. Rask motioned for her engineers to assist Celine, while Cade barked orders to his marauders, securing the perimeter of the cavern. Tension hung in the air, but now it was tinged with a sense of purpose. Together, they began to understand the relic's mechanics, focusing on the energy flow and the pulsating symbols that danced before them. As they worked, the projection of the galaxy map glowed brighter, illuminating faces hardened by rivalry but softened by necessity. Rask found herself aligning with Cade and Celine, the weight of their combined knowledge forming a fragile bond. Together, Rask urged, we can do this. With their combined efforts, the trio began to form a plan. Rask's engineers identified a set of glyphs that seemed to function as a shutdown sequence, but they needed time to input the codes. They worked swiftly, their fingers flying across the controls, but the energy from the relic pulsed dangerously. Each moment felt like a ticking clock, the map's bright red pathways pulsating like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the ground shook more violently, and a deafening roar echoed from the depths of the planet. Dust and rocks rained down from the cavern ceiling as an ancient defense mechanism within the relic activated, unleashing a wave of energy that struck their defenses. Hold together, Celine yelled, rallying her followers. Remember why we fight. Cade's marauders, typically disorganized, fell into a semblance of order as they pushed back against the surge, their weapons drawn, eyes scanning for the threat that was surely approaching. Rask's team continued to input the glyphs, their resolve unwavering. Finally, the last glyph clicked into place, and the relic emitted a blinding flash. For an agonizing moment, the world seemed to pause, the energy around them coalescing into a single point before exploding outward in a wave of luminescent power. The cavern's tremor ceased, and the oppressive energy began to dissipate. The map flickered and then vanished, leaving behind a lingering silence, pregnant with anticipation. As the dust settled, Rask could feel the atmosphere shift. They had succeeded in stabilizing the relic. But victory came with a cost. Outside the cavern, the sound of engines roared to life, the unmistakable thrum of ships descending onto the planet's surface. Rask turned to see a fleet of vessels breaking through the clouds, their insignias unmistakable, other factions drawn by the relic's energy. More enemies are on the way, Rask warned, her heart racing again. We must regroup. Cade exchanged a look with Rask and Celine, and in that moment, they understood that their alliance was not only about survival, it was about standing united against the oncoming storm. The relic may have drawn them together, but it was their shared desire to survive that forged a bond stronger than rivalry. Together, they prepared to face whatever new challenges awaited them, knowing that the choices they made next would shape not just their fates, but the fate of the entire galaxy. Unity or oblivion, there was no other choice.